Hello everyone. In the last class, in the last segment, we saw the different example of different type of cardinality ratio. So now in this example, in the company year diagram, we actually listed couple of relationship, and for each relationship, we have to specify this maximum participation as a form of cardinality ratio. Let's just find out that. Whether we understand what type of cardinality ratio will be for each type of relationship. Say, for example, we listed all kind of relationship here. Say manager. So managers, it's a relationship, and we'll see employee. The participating entity types are employee and department. All right. So based on the description we have, document requirement we have, each department will have only one manager. Okay, so each department is going to have only one manager. All right, so each department only have one manager, so on employee side this will be one. Okay, and couple of employee, some employee can work as a manager for a department, but at a time actually each employee will work for only, as a manager it will work for only one department. Okay, we know that each employee works for only one department at a time. The role at that time can be at some time the role can be a manager, but at every point one employee will work only one department. Okay, so what type of relationship this will be? This will be a 1:1 relationship. So it is saying that each department will have only one employee as a manager. Each department will be managed by only one manager, and all right, and one employee can work as a manager only for one department. Okay, now let's think about some 1 to n relationship. If we have some 1 to n relationship in our company database diagram, so think about the relationship employee, and we have another relationship between employee and department, which is works for. As we said, we can have multiple relationship between the same entities. Okay, so here the relationship is managers, and here the relationship is between the same two entities. The relationship is works for. Now the relationship type is different, and here the cardinality ratio can be also different. So if we think about multiple employee set, like that, so the document says that each each employee will work only for one department. Okay, so each employee will work only for one department, but one department will have a list of employees. Okay, so one department will have a list of employees, so it will look like actually that. Like that. Okay, so if we have, I'm sorry, not this one. So E4, E5 works in D3 department, E3 works in D1, D2, and this 3 works in D1 department, like that. So multiple employees is going to work in one department. Okay, but one department will have multiple employees, but each employee will work in only one department. So that's one, this department side, and that's many on employee side. Okay, so this relationship cardinality will be n to 1. Okay, depends on how you are showing that. If you are showing department to employee, this is 1 to many. From employee to department, this is a many to 1 relationship. Okay, and you can see here that here we have two different type of relationship between the same two entities, but the relationship types, the relationship instances will be different, and the relationship constant is also different. Many to many relationship, we can find many to many relationship like that. Say multiple, if we think about the works on relationship between, sorry, this is the relationship diamond shaped, and we have this relationship we have between employee and project. Okay, so like that. So multiple employees can work in the same project. Okay, so each project will have multiple employees work in that, and this one employee can actually one employee can works with multiple project. So one employee will work at a time, one employee will work only in one department, but one department has multiple projects under that. So one employee can each employee is going to actually works with multiple project. So this will look like this, and in each project there will be also multiple employees. So it's actually many on both sides, and we are going to show that like that. So it's many to many relationship. Okay, now we are going to talk about existence dependency, and existence dependency actually says us it's a constraint about the minimum participation. It will specify the minimum participation. So we have like two type of existence dependency, also known as participation constraint. We have a zero, it's also known as partial, and we have one or more participation known as total. Okay, so partial participation says that the participation is optional in the relationship, and the total participation says that the participation is mandatory in the relationship. So let's see example. So let's think about the relationship between works for. We have the relationship employee, and we have department. I'm sorry, it should be the diamond shaped. Okay, the relationship we are going to show with the diamond shaped. The total participation says that the participation is mandatory. Okay, if the participation is mandatory, that means it's a total participation. Now let's think about this works for relationship. We know that each employee must work under a department. Okay, each employee must work under a department. Each employee must work under one department. Okay, and each department will have multiple employees. So there will not be any department that doesn't have any employee. So let's just think about as a set, and let's see, we have only two department. Okay, so E1, E2, E3 works in D1 department, and E4 and E5 works in D2 department. Okay, and the relationship instance will look like that: E1 D1, E2 D1, E3 D1, E4 D2, E5 D2. So these are our relationship instance. All right, so here the requirement is that each employee must work under a department. It is saying that if we consider all the relationship instance, each of the employee must participate. Each of the employee must have a participation one or more, it can be one or more, must have a participation in this relationship instance. Okay, we have 5 relationship instance, and in those 5 relationship instance all of the employees should be there. Okay, so I'm saying that each of the employee must have a participation in this relationship. Okay, so this is known as total participation. The participation is not optional, the participation is mandatory. So each employee must works for a department. So when I'm thinking about the works for relationship, each of the employee must have to participate in this relationship. So this is known as a total participation. So the participation for employee in this relationship is total. Okay, so this is a mandatory participation. And if the participation is mandatory or total, we are going to represent that using a double line. Okay, so we are going to represent a total participation using a double line, not a single line. So the single lines means partial participation and the double line means total. So let's now look at the participation from department to works for. I mean the participation of department in the works for relationship. So here also we are saying that each department should have a list of employees. Each department must have a list of employees. Okay, so here also the participation is total. So if we have a department that doesn't have any employees, I mean not at all, that means it's actually it's nothing. Like, so each department must have at least one employees. So here also the participation is total. So in this relationship all the department must exist. So D1, D2, everyone will exist in this relationship. Okay, now partial participation says that the participation is optional. Okay, now let's think about employee and department. We have another relationship, managers. Now let's use the same example. Let's see, we have total 5 employees here. That was a one-to-one relationship, and we have total 2 department. Okay, so two department needs only 2 manager, right? So let's say E1 works as a manager, E4 works as a manager for D2 department. So the relationship entity, relationship set, we have E1, D1, and we have E4, D2. Okay, so what does it says? So if we think about the participation for employee in the relationship, we can see that now some employee will work as a manager, but not every employee will work as a manager, right? So here only E1 and E4 are participating in this relationship. So E3, E2, E3, E5, they are not working as a manager. They are just as a regular employee. Okay, not every employee is going to work as a manager. Only few of the employees will work as a manager. So here the participation is optional. The participation is not mandatory for each employee. Okay, it's not mandatory that each employee has to be a manager. That's the idea. So in the relationship instance, you can see that only E1 and E4 are working as a manager. Okay, so here the participation for employee to managers, it's a partial. Means minimum participation, the partial means that here it says that it's a partial participation. Alright, so means the participation is optional, not mandatory. But what about the department to managers? We know that each department has to have a manager. Each department has to have a manager. Okay, and from the relationship instance, from the relationship set, you can see that all the departments are here in this set. Okay, D1, D2, we have 2 departments, and all the departments are here in this set. So here the participation is mandatory, total. Means each department has to have a manager. Okay, so here you are seeing one example where one side has a partial participation and another side has a total participation. Okay, so I guess we actually know all the constants based on the relationship. Now what we have to do, we have to just put them all together and we will see our ER diagram is ready. Alright, so we know about all the entities, how to represent the entities, how to represent their attributes. Now some of the attributes comes from another department. That means now in that case we are going to actually connect, let me say that again. We are saying that we can now represent the entities and their attributes. So some of the attributes can come from another entity, means that actually these two entities are related. For example, let's see, we have employee. In our initial design we saw that we have an employee and employee has a attribute department, and this department comes from another entity. Okay, now if this is the case, that means actually that's a relationship. We are going to actually represent this as a relationship. We are going to cut this attribute here, we are going to represent this, we are going to connect two entities here like with a relationship, like, and we will give it a name, works for. Okay, now we are going to see actually the big picture. Okay, so we had our initial design only with the entities, then we saw a couple of relationship, we figured out what type of relationship we have, and we saw different type of relationship constant. Okay, now let's see the big picture. Okay, and in the next segment I will actually explain every detail of this big picture step by step.